An explosion happened. Emmy questioned Ruby about the blocked attack, and Ruby responded uncertainty, noting the quietness. Suddenly, smoke emerged as the spider launched another attack, confirming Ruby's suspicion that the spider remained alive and dangerous. The spider remained alive despite Emmy's explosive attack. Ruby marveled at the spider enduring a direct hit from the Phoenix Burst's iris, questioning its strength. The spider then unleashed a massive amount of frost chi towards them, prompting Emmy and Ruby to swiftly dodge the attack. Theo positioned himself between Emmy and Ruby, announcing that he had completed setting up the magical trap. He commended the two for their efforts and urged them to entrust the situation to him. Theo then swiftly utilized his flash steps technique to ascend to the top of the spider. The spider unleashed its frost chi towards Theo, who swiftly dodged the attack by jumping to the ground. Theo pondered the ineffectiveness of his entreaty sword against such powerful foes, questioning the strength of advanced-level beasts. Determined, Theo attempted to strike the bamboo, but the spider adeptly defended it, showcasing its formidable defense. Theo noticed the spider's intense focus on protecting the serene bamboo. He strategized to use the bamboo as bait to draw the spider towards the magical trap. Observing the spider's movements carefully, Theo waited for the right moment. When the time was right, he activated the Void of Space spell to execute his plan. Ruby was amazed by Theo's quick and effective setup of the magical trap, dispelling her doubts. Hearing Theo's call, Ruby and Emmy seized the opportunity to attack the spider, using their skills to engage in battle. Ruby noted that their attacks were ineffective against the spider's tough skin. Theo realized it was up to him to finish it. When the spider used its frozen chi, Theo defended himself with his shield. Despite the spider's venomous fangs and a fierce push, Theo managed to defeat the spider in the end. Emmy and Ruby hurried to Theo's side, expressing concern about his well-being and the wound on his shoulder. Theo reassured them that he was fine, but then suddenly lost consciousness, leaving Emmy and Ruby shocked and worried. Ruby urged Theo to regain consciousness and then checked his pulse. She informed Emmy that his pulse was very slow, and his breathing was also slow. Concerned about Theo's condition, Ruby and Emmy pondered what they should do next. Theo felt conflicted about deceiving Emmy and Ruby, but he remembered the Fourth Master's request. He believed that testing their trustworthiness was necessary to confirm their intentions. Theo considered that if Emmy and Ruby attempted to harm him, they would use the delicate jade staff. If they deserted him to claim the serene bamboo, he would confront and retrieve the bamboo from them. However, if they offered assistance, he would let go of his suspicions towards them. Emmy suggested to Ruby that they should take Theo home first. She believed that by studying the poison fangs, they might discover an antidote to help Theo. Ruby agreed with Emmy's suggestion, acknowledging that a thorough investigation of the poison might yield positive results. Emmy then assisted Theo. Ruby suggested that they should gather the serene bamboo first. She reasoned that if Theo woke up and found the bamboo missing, they would not be able to explain if he suspected them of stealing it. Ruby took charge of collecting the serene bamboo and the great conch spider's body. She instructed Emmy to quickly return home with Theo. Emmy responded affirmatively, urging Ruby to be careful in handling the task. Emmy hurried back home, expressing her wish for Theo to wake up, promising to do everything possible to help him survive. Theo pondered in his mind, feeling troubled by the situation and questioning whether he suspected Emmy and Ruby without reason. Emmy and Theo reached home, where Ruby also arrived. Ruby suggested gathering herbs that could counteract poison. Upon seeing Emmy, she questioned what is Emmy's doing. However, Emmy in a panic state, mentioning issues with paralysis, blood circulation. Emmy rushed outside, determined to extract the poison from the poison fang. Ruby reminded her to check on Theo first, but she suggested they go outside together. Ruby said to Emmy that no matter how much she cared for Theo, she couldn't just touch him. In response, Emmy blushing said, "Enough." Theo's thoughts pondered on how Emmy and Ruby trusted him and were attempting to help. He felt ashamed for suspecting them and wondered if it would be best to get up at that moment. Theo noticed a book that contained documents on making Dan pills. However, he realized that there were no production methods for useful Dan pills in the book. Theo remarked on the book, finding it in poor condition and burnt up, making it impossible to read anything. He wondered if Ruby and Emmy had used this book for practicing Dan extraction. Suddenly, Theo heard footsteps approaching the room. In response, he quickly hurried back to the bed. Emmy encouraged Theo to open his eyes and then confidently stated that she knew he was awake. Startled, Theo sat up on the bed and asked how she knew he was awake. Emmy pointed out that the shape of the blanket was different from when she covered Theo, indicating he wasn't paralyzed from the poison. Theo acknowledged Emmy's observation, complimenting her keen eyesight. Theo admitted that he was indeed paralyzed but felt he recovered quickly. When Emmy inquired how that was possible, Theo explained that in his youth, he consumed certain poisonous herbs that helped strengthen his immunity against poison over time. Emmy retrieved the bamboo from the pouch and expressed a mix of relief and embarrassment for worrying, but she was glad that Theo had recovered. She handed over the promised serene bamboo and mentioned that her sister had brought the body of the great conch spider. Theo thanked both Emmy and her sister for providing all the necessary ingredients. He expressed his hope to be able to give each of them a pill. Emmy responded with a hopeful sentiment, expressing her desire for the same outcome. Ruby, on her way to Theo's room, wondered where Emmy had gone and if she might still be with Theo. When Ruby saw that Theo was awake, she expressed her joy that he was awake. Theo responded gratefully, acknowledging that he had improved thanks to Ruby's help. Theo expressed gratitude as they discussed what to do with the great conch spider. Ruby offered Theo the spider, stating that if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have stood a chance against it, so it was fitting for him to have it. Theo hesitated at the offer. Ruby hesitated before asking for a favor, wondering if it might be impolite. Theo encouraged her to share the request. Ruby then asked if Theo could make Dan pills out of all the herbs they had gathered up to that point. Emmy was surprised by Ruby's request. Ruby reassured Emmy, mentioning that they only had each other at that moment. She emphasized that Theo was someone they could trust. However, Ruby acknowledged that they didn't know much about Theo. Ruby asked Theo how old he was, and he responded that he was 23 and would soon be 24. Emmy and Ruby were shocked and surprised, exclaiming loudly at his age. They were astonished to find out that at 23, Theo was at the same stage of heavenly birth as they were. Theo inquired if there was a problem. Ruby found it hard to believe. Emmy shared that she and her sister had trained for 100 years to reach that stage. Ruby asked Theo if he was born in the forest of beasts and speculated that someone must have taken care of him and trained him. She inquired about the identity of the person who fulfilled these roles in his life. Emmy advised Ruby that she was asking too many questions, to the point of being impolite. She mentioned that the questions about Theo's past had nothing to do with the favor of Dan extraction that they were discussing. Theo hesitated in his thoughts, realizing he couldn't reveal his master's identity carelessly. When questioned, he responded that his master had passed away and had chosen not to disclose his history. He then asked if that explanation satisfied the inquiry. Emmy addressed Theo, asking him to understand her sister's intentions. She explained that Ruby didn't mean any harm. Emmy emphasized that they were in a difficult situation, requesting a favor that was hard for them to fully disclose. Ruby acknowledged her mistake, admitting she was sorry. She recognized the importance of the situation, as it determined their fate, and attributed her emotional reaction to the significance. Ruby also reflected on the fact that every alchemist in the Forest of Beasts faced their own challenges, which she momentarily forgot in the heat of the moment. Ruby shared a tale about the herbs they needed extracted. They hailed from the Yanam nation of the Unyak faction, a union of the Un and Yak families. The Unyak faction specialized in cultivating herbs and extracting Dan from them. But one day, a group known as the Dark Beast Mountain Clan launched an attack, causing everything to crumble within just a day. Only a few managed to escape from the place engulfed in flames from all directions. The Zen masters evaded the impending siege and fled to the Forest of Beasts. Now, only 2 people remain along with some burnt books. Theo acknowledged the significance of the Zen master's legacy, understanding why they had asked him those questions. Ruby expressed that they didn't just seek his assistance. They also offered him 30% if he could create Dan pills for them. Ruby inquired if it was acceptable to seek Theo's help. Theo agreed and mentioned that he would begin by examining the herbs they had brought. Observing the situation, Theo noted that the medicine room he had previously visited had a substantial amount of herbs. However, upon seeing the cultivated herbs collected from their ancestors' times, he realized that they truly had a vast collection. Back at the village, Julian inquired if anyone had betrayed Theo. In response, Theo explained that he had tested those around him, expecting them to attempt stealing his Dharma tools. Surprisingly, they did not betray him but instead made sincere efforts to heal him. Julian questioned if Theo had defeated the great conch spider. Theo confirmed the victory and mentioned acquiring the serene bamboo, signaling the beginning of the extraction process for the eternal youth Dan pill. Additionally, Emmy and Ruby had gathered a vast quantity of herbs for extraction, prompting Theo to consider making some Dan pills as a test. Julian responded by granting Theo the freedom to handle the situation as he saw fit, cautioning against excessive suspicion, which can also be harmful. Theo acknowledged his master's words. Samuel addressed Theo, acknowledging the acquisition of the serene bamboo and implying that the extraction for the eternal youth Dan pill would commence. Theo greeted the second and third masters. Julian humorously commented that Theo would likely isolate himself in the extraction room for months, jesting about not being able to see him during that time. Theo played with a young boar and mentioned that the furnace's fire must not extinguish even for a moment to create the eternal youth Dan pill. He asked for help, and Grant reassured him, saying he had ample time to utilize as he pleased. Grant emphasized that it was common to spend a significant amount of time when crafting something valuable. Julian reminded Theo that he needed to complete his task before his old masters passed away. Theo, feeling the urgency, protested Julian's words. He promised to swiftly create the eternal youth Dan pill and return promptly. At Ruby and Emmy's location, a bomb was placed and detonated, causing an explosion. Two mysterious men, one bald, discussed planting another firebomb. They remarked on the strength of the steel door, expressing surprise at its durability. The fur man suggested that they would need to utilize all their resources to destroy the steel door. The bald man questioned the purpose of the firebombs if not for that task. The fur man concurred with the bald man's sentiment. The bald man expressed that as men, they couldn't coexist indefinitely, suggesting they relocate to the forest of beasts. He proposed that they should intimidate the two individuals for killing Jagger and have them serve their needs. The fur man agreed, acknowledging the firebombs were brought for a crucial moment, affirming his brother's plan. The fur man planted the bomb as the bald man swung his torch with fire, commending the act. He instructed the fur man to step aside. The fire ignited the bomb, leading to an explosion. Theo walked towards Emmy and Ruby's place, pondering his situation. He thought about his year-long extraction process for the eternal youth Dan pill, realizing he hadn't had the opportunity to update them. Concerned, he wondered how Emmy and Ruby was doing. Theo imagined how beneficial it would be if the masters also took the eternal youth Dan pills. Despite his repeated offers, they obstinately refused, claiming they didn't require them. Theo worried that their refusal might result in their lifespans shortening. Theo heard a loud boom and immediately inquired about the source of the sound. Upon locating the direction from which it came, he hurriedly made his way towards it. Theo's thoughts raced as he processed the situation. An explosion had occurred near the location where Emmy and Ruby lived. He couldn't shake off the feeling that it was no mere coincidence. Concerned, he approached the site and observed the steel door had an explosion. The bald man remarked on the steel door's durability, assuming it must have sustained significant damage. The fur man agreed, suggesting that a firebomb should have created a man-sized hole. He proposed installing another one. The bald man approved of the idea. Theo employed his concealment skill, concealing himself as he pondered the troubling situation. He wondered about the identity of the attackers and their motives for targeting the residence of the ladies. Ruby and Emmy stood at the entrance of the steel door. Ruby insisted that she had already shared all the information about Jagger. She expressed that Jagger had met a deserved end, questioning why they were being targeted and their residence ruined. The bald man, visibly angry, shouted at Ruby and Emmy, questioning their repetitive explanations. He expressed uncertainty about whether the priest deserved to die. Accusing them of using cowardly methods to kill their priest, he condemned their actions. Theo realized that the attackers were seeking revenge on behalf of Jagger. He suspected that Ruby and Emmy had not disclosed his involvement. The bald man, in a fit of anger, demanded that Ruby and Emmy serve them to atone for their alleged sins. Theo pondered the situation, noting that both attackers appeared to be skilled heavenly-birthed alchemists. He questioned what his course of action should be. Recalling the fourth master's advice to avoid risking himself to help others, Theo faced a dilemma on how to proceed. Theo grappled with conflicting thoughts. While he couldn't simply remain passive, as he had promised to provide eternal youth Dan pills, contemplating when and how to assist, he strategized on how to approach the situation. The bald man, displaying aggression, dismissed any arguments, He threatened to subdue Ruby and Emmy forcefully if they did not comply with their demands. Utilizing his sword with a fire torch skill, he launched an attack, instructing them to submit quietly. In response, Emmy and Ruby raised their shields to defend themselves. Ruby alerted Emmy to the situation behind them, causing surprise as they realized they were surrounded. The bald man taunted them, pointing out their lack of a motion Dharma tool, implying they were trapped and unable to escape. The bald man accused Ruby and Emmy of causing the death of Priest Jagger. In response, the fur man asserting that they must have employed deceitful tactics instead. The bald man proposed that Ruby and Emmy surrender gracefully now that they had no means of escape. The fur man suggested using a cracking whip to educate them, insinuating that it would swiftly make the two women compliant, begging for mercy. Theo emerged and skillfully engaged the situation. The fur man recognized the delicate jade staff as belonging to Priest Jagger. Surprised by Theo's appearance, the fur man attacked with his weapon. Although Theo attempted to counter by cutting the man's weapon, he struggled to succeed. The fur man berated Theo, labeling him as foolish for attempting to cut the cracking whip with a regular sword. Determined to teach Theo a lesson, the fur man called him over, preparing to deliver a decisive blow. With a swift strike, he hit Theo in the stomach. The fur man observed a difference in Theo's fighting style, prompting curiosity. Meanwhile, Theo appreciated the fur man's action of closing the distance on his own. The fur man was surprised that his attack did not cause any rib fractures in Theo. Theo unleashed his skill, the swelter of anxiety, causing discomfort to the fur man. Bewildered by the unfamiliar technique, the fur man questioned its nature. In response, Theo employed his energy burst skill, overpowering the fur man and achieving victory in their confrontation. The bald man screamed in distress as he observed his defeated companion. Ruby and Emmy stood alongside Theo, ready to face the bald man. Ruby expressed relief at Theo's arrival, to which Theo responded gratefully that he had not arrived late. The bald man, seething with anger, prepared for the impending confrontation. Theo prepared himself, acknowledging the value of his white spider sword crafted from the great conch spider's shells. He also possessed a fire bomb same to those used by the enemy. With the bald man standing solo, Theo felt confident that with Ruby and Emmy beside him, they had a strong chance of success in the upcoming encounter. The bald man expressed outrage over Theo's involvement, realizing that Theo had aided Ruby and Emmy. Blaming them for the death of Priest Jagger, the bald man vowed to avenge the fallen priests by shedding Theo's blood. He then created an explosion, prompting Ruby, Emmy, and Theo to leap outside to safety. The bald man remarked that if Theo had not interfered and left them, he would have eliminated them all earlier. He proposed that if they were to slash Theo's throat at that moment, he would show them special favor. Ruby, Emmy, and Theo launched their skills to attack the bald man, who easily defended against their assault. Mocking their efforts, he doubted the efficacy of their attacks. He blamed them for the deaths of the two priests, claiming that their dirty tactics had caused the fatalities. The bald man taunted them, asserting that they couldn't even harm him. Theo realized that their attacks were ineffective because of the flame barrier the bald man relied on for defense. Understanding the situation, Theo decided to use the fire bomb he had brought to counter the barrier. Theo swung the fire bomb towards the bald man, who recognized the threat. Realizing the potential danger if he blocked the bomb with his flame barrier, the bald man swiftly dodged the incoming explosive, avoiding the detonation. The bald man scoffed at the fire bomb, questioning its effectiveness with a predictable trajectory compared to ordinary Dharma tools. However, to his surprise, Theo smiled and swiftly retrieved the bomb, changing its course unexpectedly. Theo pointed out the bald man's vulnerability due to his over-reliance on the flame barrier. As the bomb approached the bald man, it detonated, causing an explosion. Reflecting on the victory, Theo credited the white spider sword and spider web for making the win seem effortless. Theo turned to Ruby and Emmy, inquiring about their well-being. Ruby expressed gratitude, acknowledging that Theo had saved them twice and pondering how they could repay the debt. Emmy, overwhelmed with emotion, hugged Theo tightly, expressing her heartfelt thanks for his actions. Emmy revealed that for a year, they had believed Theo to be deceased until recently. Theo chuckled in response, expressing relief that he had arrived in time and could fulfill the promise he made to them. Surprised by Theo's statement, Emmy inquired further, seeking clarification on the promise he referred to. In their residence, Ruby commended Theo for successfully extracting the Dan. Theo affirmed the achievement and kept his promise by offering one pill to each of them. Ruby expressed astonishment at the idea of consuming the Eternal Youth Dan pills, considering it an unexpected opportunity. Emmy echoed her sentiment, sharing the sentiment of surprise. Theo acknowledged their assistance and mentioned creating a partial Dan seal to aid in nurturing their spirit energy as a trial. Ruby expressed her gratitude for the gesture. Theo expressed his intention to extract the Dan from the herbs collected by Ruby and Emmy, as previously discussed. He hesitated, questioning if it was appropriate for him, an outsider, to inherit their legacy. In response, Emmy reassured Theo, stating that they trusted him. Ruby concurred, highlighting that Theo had already saved them on 2 separate occasions. Theo acknowledged their trust and understanding. However, he pointed out that extracting Dan from the gathered ingredients would be a time-consuming process, estimating it would take at least 5 years to complete. 5 years later, in the village, Samuel, weak and resting in bed, expressed pride in Theo's progress. Despite not dedicating significant time to teaching Theo, Samuel noted the continuous improvement in Theo's abilities. He highlighted Theo's achievements, mentioning the extraction of Dan, creation of Eternal Youth pills, and enhancement of his heavenly birth within only 5 years. Theo confirmed Samuel's observations. Samuel reflected on his past, expressing uncertainty about his life's purpose. He recounted his attempt to chant the 1,000 demon spell and control the fiend, which led to him losing his spirit energy and becoming obsolete. He warned Theo not to repeat his mistakes. Theo acknowledged his master's advice, promising to remember it. Samuel expressed relief at seeing Theo in his final moments. With a smile, he closed his eyes and entrusted Theo with the ability to enjoy eternal life. He advised Theo to take care of the shadow orchid and reminded him to light a torch at night. Samuel peacefully passed away, leaving Theo with his final words echoing in the air. At the graveyard, Julian remarked on the recent passing of Samuel. Despite knowing that Grant was not enjoyable to be around, Julian found it surprising that he passed away so quietly. Julian reflected on how Grant remained uninteresting until the very end. Julian mentioned that he didn't have many days left, suggesting Theo wait patiently. Theo, alarmed by Julian's words, implored his master not to make such jokes about his health and well-being. Julian revealed to Theo that he should now listen carefully to his own history, having already learned about the other masters. He mentioned that Theo might have heard of his notorious reputation as a renowned thief among the alchemists. Julian was born without any innate talent. However, upon learning about the alchemists and their elixirs promising eternal life, he resorted to stealing various elixirs to fulfill his desire for immortality. The stolen elixirs for granting him a natural talent at the age of 40, leading him to become an alchemist. He acknowledged that this transformation wouldn't have been possible without the stolen elixirs. As a result, Julian acquired the nickname the Goblin Bandit due to his past actions. Julian expressed a hypothetical scenario where if his Niden internal alchemy were in good condition, he jokingly mentioned that he would steal the Eternal Youth Dan pills that Theo had created. Julian expressed a hint of frustration, questioning if Theo had forgotten the teachings he imparted. He emphasized that if the Niden of the other masters or himself had not been damaged, they would have not taught Theo with the utmost care and attention. He reminded Theo of the alchemist's nature, emphasizing that they are individuals who would go to great lengths to become masters of their own destiny. He mentioned that they had advised Theo not to fully trust him or the other masters. Julian speculated that Samuel or Grant may have acted differently, but he assured Theo that he, at least, would not have cared for him. Theo appeared somber and thoughtful. Julian, noticing this, playfully pinched Theo's face and reassured him that he was not like that now. Theo, reacting to the pinch, exclaimed in surprise, addressing Julian as the fourth master. Julian, with a proud smile, expressed his relief that Theo had joined their group. He reflected on how everyone, including himself, had transformed into ordinary individuals and reclaimed their former status. Julian expressed his gratitude towards Theo. In a moment of curiosity, Julian approached the handicapped man and expressed his interest in knowing his true identity. The handicapped man inquired about Julian's curiosity, and Julian admitted his inability to decipher the man's true self. Despite Julian's persistence in wanting to know, the handicapped man questioned the relevance of disclosing his identity, as they were both on the verge of death. Julian expressed his unease at the thought of passing away without knowing the handicapped man's true identity. Urgently, he requested the man to reveal this information, describing it as his first and final favor. Julian reminded the man of the assistance he had unknowingly provided, emphasizing the importance of this final request. In response to Julian's persistent request, the handicapped man revealed his name as Troy. Julian was taken aback by this revelation and expressed surprise. He recognized Troy as the monarch of the evil sword, the martial gatekeeper. Troy confirmed his true identity. Julian expressed surprise to Troy, acknowledging his unexpected presence in the forest of beasts. He mentioned his astonishment at discovering Senior Leo's exceptional abilities and now realizing that another genius, Troy, resided in their village. Julian marveled at the remarkable talents of both Leo and Troy. Julian inquired of Troy, asking for the secret behind achieving balance in yin and yang vitality at the age of only 300 years. Troy casually replied that there was nothing to know. Julian chuckled, agreeing with Troy's sentiment and humorously questioned the need for such knowledge. Julian then suggested that Troy share this secret with Theo, even if Troy were to assume the role of Theo's first master, as Senior Leo would surely approve. Troy, however, dismissed the idea, indicating that there was no need for such actions, and walked away. Julian speculated that Troy's presence hinted at a dark conspiracy. He questioned Troy about seeking revenge, believing that Theo could escape the forest of beasts with Troy's teachings. Julian trusted that Theo would appreciate the help and seek revenge. Troy, however, chose to disregard Julian's suggestion and bid him to rest peacefully without further discussion. 2 years later, Julian, weakened and with the company of the boar, revealed to Theo the moment he was eventually captured. He confessed to disclosing the locations of the stolen treasures to spare his life. However, Julian kept the whereabouts of the most peculiar and enigmatic treasure a secret. He promised to disclose the hiding place of the key to the 100 choices to Theo. Julian advised Theo to discover the purpose of the treasure, emphasizing that it would be incredibly beneficial. He expressed that this assistance might be the final help he could offer to Theo. Julian urged Theo to strive to enter the heavenly palace even if Troy did not pass on his teachings. He encouraged Theo to become a better person, enjoy eternal life, and pursue his desires. Julian promised to protect Theo in his next life and sought Theo's understanding. Theo acknowledged his master's wishes, saying yes. Julian peacefully passed away. In the village, Theo knelt before Troy, who inquired if Theo had resolved his thoughts after a week since Julian's passing. Theo confirmed that he had. Troy then questioned if Theo had come to request his teachings. Theo affirmed this, indicating that he sought to learn from Troy. Troy reminded Theo of a lesson taught 21 years ago, asking if Theo recalled it, to which Theo confirmed. Troy explained that the previous lesson was just the beginning, indicating that Theo's mental capacity would develop, enabling him to remain calm and composed in any circumstance. Theo expressed his eternal gratitude towards Troy for the teachings. In response, Troy clarified that he taught willingly, so Theo need not view it as a debt. However, Troy with a more serious tone mentioned that if Theo desired to serve him as a master and receive further teachings, the story would change differently. Theo inquired of Troy what he could do to help. Troy outlined 2 conditions. First, following Julian's advice, Theo must seek revenge on Troy's behalf. Troy revealed that he had been attacked by unknown assailants, resulting in his Niden being damaged, and he was left in the forest with both arms severed. He requested Theo to uncover the perpetrators responsible for his condition and exact revenge on his behalf. Theo assured Troy that he would escape the forest of beasts and avenge him as promised. Troy presented the second condition to Theo. He pledged to teach destruction sword arts, string craftsmanship, chant of black ice, and freehand sword technique. After mastering these skills, Troy requested Theo to end his life using destruction sword arts. Theo, taken aback and concerned, sought clarity, to which Troy reiterated that killing him was the second condition.